whatever comes our way, whatever battle we have raging inside us, we always have a choice, and it's the choices that make us who we are, and we can always choose to do what's right. Alright, I know that's from Spider-Man 3, yeah, but the idea of choice is huge in the first Spider-Man. So much so, it actually has its own musical theme. Today I'll be focusing on the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man score. Ooh. We're going to be analysing the Peter Parker theme and seeing how it solidifies the idea of choice. And we're also going to be looking at how it musically represents the importance of having a moral system. Welcome to the Film Music Junkie, where we analyse film scores to see how they are emotionally manipulating an audience. My name is Alita, and let's just set ourselves on fire and then jump into a lake, shall we? Let's go. Into the music analysis though, let's define what choice means in relation to this film. So I've been dipping in and out of this book called what's it called? The Nicomachean, I think that's how you call it, the Nicomachean Ethics by my man Aristotle, as you do, and he also talked about choice. He said that for a choice to be a legitimate choice, it needed to be 1, voluntary, and 2, needed to be after deliberation. Here's what my man Aristotle said. Since, therefore, an object of choice is something within our power at which we aim after deliberation, choice will be a deliberate appetition of things that lie in our power. So here's my interpretation of what that meant, and it sort of sits perfectly within the moral structure of Spider-Man, basically. Here we go. Here's what I wrote. Choice is a tendency towards ways of interacting with things that are within our power of influence. These interactions must be carried out after a time of rumination. And if you have great power, as the old wise man said, there is a heavy responsibility on the person with that power to make the right choices. And I believe that's what Uncle Ben's message is about. Rest in peace. The idea of choice and deliberation is what the Peter Parker theme is highlighting. In the movie, there's quite a few musical themes. There's the Green Goblin theme, there's a responsibility theme, there's a love theme, and there's also separate themes for Spider-Man and Peter Parker. Danny Elfman said that the Peter Parker theme is based on the Spider-Man theme, and I believe doing a quick comparison between the two themes is going to help us understand the character of Peter Parker a bit more. Yeah. They share the same melodic contour. This helps to musically show that Peter Parker and Spider-Man are one entity, one and the same. The Spider-Man theme is rhythmically asymmetrical. Da, 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 da. There's movement in there. This creates a sense of momentum and direction. This ties into the idea of Spider-Man always striving forward, going to the scene of a crime, always moving, always looking to do the right thing. The Peter Parker theme is a rhythmic palindrome. It's rhythmically symmetrical, so has more of a directionless floating entity thing to it. And floating entity. When Peter Parker is thinking about how to act in a situation, this floating symmetrical theme represents him thinking. Peter Parker's theme avoids the third of chord. The third of a chord has a big impact on reflecting the amount of certainty a character has towards something, or a feeling, and stuff like that. Having no third of chord in the Peter Parker theme reflects his indecisiveness between choosing what is good and what is right. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to just pretend to be thinking, because I don't, and I'm going to first put some music that avoids the third of chord, and then I'm going to put some music that has the third of chord in it. So here's me thinking for the first time today, and see if you can feel if I'm decisive on what I'm going to choose. Here's me again thinking for the second time today. Can you hear the difference? One of them I'm sort of like, and the other one I'm like, You understand? The Spider-Man theme does go to the third, and it goes there right after the tonic. This ties into the idea of strength and certainty that Spider-Man has with his moral value system. You know, great power, great responsibility, all that stuff. The Peter Parker theme represents his more yin, chaotic potential side, and the Spider-Man theme is his more yang, action-based side. Yeah. And this is done by just avoiding the third of chord or using it. The Peter Parker theme represents him choosing between his duty and his desires. And that's probably the most relatable superhero I can think of. I'm going to call the Peter Parker theme the choice theme because it has less syllables and I'm lazy. The choice theme is dotted around the film and is always heard in conjunction with Peter choosing how to act in a situation. From watching the film a few times, I listened out for the choice theme and I heard it maybe about 12 times. We're not going to talk about all the 12 times, we're just going to talk about my top 5. Here we go. The first time we hear the choice theme is in the opening titles music. Establishing thematic material before the film actually starts is a good way of setting the tone for the film. That's what overtures are for when you're watching, a Wagnerian opera or a musical. It puts the audience in the headspace of the emotional messages the film is about to give us, but using music. And this is a very useful technique, but only depending on the genre, the type of film that you're making. A lot of films don't actually do this, and that's because they want the audience to think for themselves and sort of reveal things about the film while it's happening. And I prefer that, to be honest, but for kids' films, I let them off. It's okay. Since the target audience of Spider-Man is young teens and children, having strong musical themes at the beginning of the film helps to establish the core message of the film. It does this to limit nuance, as to limit the interpretations the audience takes from the film. Yeah, the eradication of nuance. I think it should be kept to stories. Not being political or anything, but yeah. For example, a lot of animated films have their thematic material just shoved in there right at the beginning of their films. Got a quick list of films that do this, and there's loads more. How to Train Your Dragon, Monsters Inc., Road to El Dorado, Spirited Away, Isle of Dogs, Chicken Run, The Incredibles, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, Shrek, Princess Mononoke, and so on. Now to analyse this music. How does Danny Elfman, the composer, musically represent the idea of choice and deliberation? The musical texture and harmony for sure are a big part of it. So what we have again is the avoidance of the third in the harp ostinato, but a hint at an augmented triad in the higher string tremolo part. In diatonic music, the augmented triad is sort of a magic spell that's not used too much because of its impact. It's twangy and adds a new colour to the music. It has like a transcendental quality to it because of that raised augmented fifth. This raised fifth sound resembles the feelings that arise when you're choosing to do something or deliberating on something, you know, the feelings of uncertainty, heightened awareness, the feeling of needing to resolve something. In this case, literally and musically. The instrumentation is also important in conveying the idea of choice and deliberation. We have quite a wide texture, as in the sonic space of the notes are spread widely. The double basses are all the way down there, yeah, and the string harmonic is all the way up there. All of this is being quietly played. To me, it's representing a stream of consciousness, like a flowing river. We then have a quiet tremolo part. Tremolo strings used in this context resembles all the many different choices that Peter Parker can make. Like, ooh, wait, this one, or this one, or this one. But just imagine loads. You know what I mean? This to me represents simmering potential. The choice theme is played on the French horn. Why did I sound angry there? Brass instruments and superhero themes are quite synonymous, and it's quite an old trick. If you know of any superhero scores that don't use brass for their main theme, let me know because I'm intrigued. Please help. I need to find one because everything I've listened to, there's always French horn or trumpet or something like that. Brass instruments work for superhero themes because of its timbre, the way it sounds. Brass sounds powerful, full-toned, strong. has a sense of grandeur about the sound. And this just perfectly sums up the superhero archetype musically. Usually with superhero themes, it's usually loud French horns just fucking going for it. But with the choice theme here, it's a solo French horn played very quietly. And this is great actually, because it reflects Peter Parker's temperament. He has the potential to be a virtuous hero, but his lack of moral backbone just stops him from fulfilling his potential. For first-time watchers, this opening cue is planting the emotions that will be explored in the film musically. The audience have already unconsciously been told what they're going to be feeling in this film, without anyone saying anything verbally. And that's the power of music, isn't it? So cool, so terrifying, so powerful. Be careful with it, guys. The film and first comic of Spider-Man follows the hero's journey story template. This template was popularised by a geezer called Joseph Campbell in his book called The Hero with 1,000 Faces. In his book, he outlines the 17 stages of the hero's journey template. The first stage being the call to adventure, and the second stage being refusal of the call. If we were to apply this to the Spider-Man film story, the call to adventure would be Spider-Man getting his powers, and the refusal of the call would be Peter Parker not listening to Uncle Ben in the car, talking about powers and responsibilities and all that crap. We hear the choice theme after Uncle Ben and Peter Parker has had that serious talk in the car. Peter chooses not to listen to Uncle Ben, and this puts the story into full swing. No pun intended. Pun intended. On screen, Peter takes a few moments to think about what Uncle Ben said, and then he's sort of like, oh, f*** it. I want to get a car so that Mary Jane... The chords are E minor, then B major second inversion. We have an imperfect cadence, and the second chord is a chord inversion. Yeah, chord inversions don't sound stable, so they always feel like they need to resolve to something. Since Peter's walking off the path of, responsibility and all that stuff, the coupling of an imperfect cadence along with a chord inversion is... It's fantastic. Well, this imperfect cadence goes from 1 to 5, and it sort of stays on 5. And it's like, this doesn't sound resolved at all. This resembles Peter not making the right choice. If he had made the right decision, maybe a perfect cadence would have sufficed. Or something else, but not an imperfect cadence. And the chord inversion not being the most stable sounding chord represents him not having a strong moral value system. The orchestration is reminiscent of the choice theme in the opening title music. Rather than a string harmonic though, we have first violins playing a note which cuts through both chords at the top. There's been a change in the way the note's being played, and the actual placement of the note is lower. It's less transcendent sounding compared to that harmonic we heard at the beginning of the film, and this represents, to me, Peter's more earthly desires. This ties into the idea that Peter doesn't yet have an ideal that is above him, so to me it represents him making the choice just using his body rather than his body and mind. Hopefully that made sense and it doesn't sound like I just listened to some Duncan Trussell and just took a load of LSD. The chords in violin 2, viola and cellos are spaced closely together. This closer spacing suggests that Peter is more certain with where he's going to go. Compared with the opening title texture, which was sort of like this, having a much more closely spaced chord creates a bit more certainty. It's hard to explain music. This cue is heard when Peter Parker chooses to listen to Uncle Ben's words of wisdom and put them into action. What's really cool about this cue is that it goes from the choice theme into the responsibility theme into the Spider-Man theme. And this represents his metamorphosis from being Peter Parker, a bit of a wimp, choosing to be responsible, and being responsible to him is being Spider-Man. All said musically and visually, of course, but musically, so cool. It matches up very smoothly to what the visuals are telling us. We hear the choice theme when he picks up his old suit. As he's picking up his old suit, we're thinking, oh, is he going to choose his old selfish ways again after all that happened? But no, he puts down the old suit representing an ego death, and he picks up the picture of Spider-Man's new costume. And what theme is heard when he's picking up this picture of the new Spider-Man suit? The responsibility theme, guys! Oh, love it. Spider-Man is an ideal, a symbol of doing what's right. So having the responsibility theme here hammers home the fact that Peter has taken up the gauntlet of justice. We then hear the Spider-Man theme musically representing his initiation into adulthood. Back to the choice theme, sorry, I got carried away with how much I like Spider-Man. Just remember Peter Parker putting his old suit to one side. That's the bit we're talking about. We have a harp ostinato similar to the opening cue, but it's using different notes. This gives the music and the scene a forward momentum, even though not much is actually happening on screen. It's sonically telling us that there's a shift in the way Peter Parker's thinking. He's moving towards a solid decision, and this has also helped along with a crescendo going into the responsibility theme as well. The string chords use fourths and seconds to create harmonic ambiguity. This helps to not give away too much too soon. It matches the uncertainty the audience has about what Peter Parker's about to do. After, we move to a chord that uses the tonic and perfect fifth. The chord used in 1-5 then crescendos into a major triad with that third in there. This suggests that he's made up his mind. The use of brass in the chord creates a sense of strength and power, which goes well with the ponderosity of Uncle Ben's message. Yes, I learnt a new word today, ponderosity. Go look it up. It's a good word to use, but maybe not in everyday conversation. People will start to hate you. Another time we hear the choice theme is when Green Goblin, he's forcing Spider-Man to choose between saving MJ or saving a cable car full of kids. Which one to choose? What Green Goblin is actually doing is pointing straight towards Peter Parker's most inner struggle. He's forcing Spider-Man to choose between Spider or man, to either choose between living a normal life or living in accordance with his moral value system. So while he's making the decision, and the two symbols of Peter's inner struggles are falling from the sky, we see the reflection of the two choices in his eyes. In a way, the Green Goblin is actually making Spider-Man be more iron-willed with his convictions, So in a sense, he's actually helping Spider-Man, but in a really messed up way. I would say the shot here sums up the film in a nutshell, and the music solidifies it by the choice theme being played here. At this moment though, he realises it's a false dichotomy, and then he just makes a choice for himself, which is basically what I think being a human being is, making your own choices for yourself. And the choice he made was to save both, and by doing this, I believe that's when he became a fully fledged adult. How does Elfman musically represent this pinnacle part of the film? So can we just quickly stand up and just appreciate the use of anvil on the cut between the shot before and then cut straight to Spider-Man's face? That deserves an Oscar. Give him all the Oscars for that. That was fantastic. Use an anvil. Yes! Thank you, Danny Elfman. It sounds like if we were to give fear or a sudden rush of adrenaline a sound. A sudden metallic just strike all over the body. It reflects the urgency of the choice Spider-Man has to take. Anvils have been used in other films. Think, I don't know, Lord of the Rings, the... What is that? Isengard. Yeah, the Isengard theme. Oh, I should do that film soon. The choice theme is played twice. Once on the French horn, and then again on a trumpet, but an octave higher. The repeat on the trumpet and octave higher of the theme represents the urgency and importance of the choice he's about to make. We have a low drone on G sharp in brass and probably other instruments, but my ears didn't pick them up. I hear tuba and bass trombone. It audibly represents the sense of dread Peter Parker is feeling towards this situation. It does this by being a solid foundational note of which all else sits on. It represents Spider-Man's burden of responsibility, his responsibility to choose what's right over what's good. I'm starting to sound like goddamn Jordan Peterson. Pick up your burden, bucko! And that's that! I love when he says that. And that's that! I get a bit scared. Sorry, Jordan. Back to the music now. There's a choir in there singing the fifth of chord. It resembles that string harmonic in the opening titles. So rather than it being a string harmonic representing higher ideals, it's the human voice. It shows that he's physically acting out his ideals rather than it just being a concept that he thinks about. He's about to choose between two things he can never fully commit to. So having a choir here adds to the human aspect of the character and to what Spider-Man actually is. A kid with the same hardships that we all have as human beings. The final time we hear the Spider-Man theme is when he rejects MJ and chooses to be a priest, Spider-Man. It's similar to the cue when he first becomes Spider-Man, where we hear the choice theme followed by the responsibility theme, then the Spider-Man theme. Again, we have choir in there, which resembles that humanistic aspect to the character. Rather than the harp ostinato hinting at a more ambiguous chord / augmented chord, we have a much more harmonically stable arpeggio. The highest string harmonic is on the tonic of the key. We have a harmonically stable chord, and the notes of the choice theme are now playing the minor triad of the key we are in. This harmonic stability represents that Peter Parker has fully chosen to be Spider-Man. That's his mission, his gift, his curse. There we have it. Great film, great score, emotions successfully manipulated. Thank you, Elfman. So that's that, bucko. Make your bed. Yeah, thanks for watching, and don't forget to dance, just like Peter Parker in Spider-Man 3 when he goes 1, 2, 3, and pop. Then he goes like this, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I know the dance, okay? I know the dance from Spider-Man 3. Okay, have a good life, and until next time, take care.